Hello, everyone. Welcome to SportsBeat on WAB. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Luke Schmitt, and joining me alongside at the desk is
Reece Merkel,
Logan Adams,
Kasey Hill,
Cavin.
For today's hour-long episode, we have plenty to recap and preview for Bobcats sports. We're going to start with Ohio hockey as the club team has won their 5th ever national championship. Then we'll cover men and women's basketball recap of the MAC tournaments and their seasons. And then we will dig into the Diamonds as both sports battle series losses. And finally, we'll talk about headlines around professional sports and dive into my favorite holiday of all time, March Madness. SportsBeat starts right now. So welcome back to the table, everyone. We're going to go start with hockey. You know, they just won their championship game last night. They are bringing the Murdoch Cup back to Athens for the first time since 2014. And we're going to bring in our producer, Jake Collins, who has covered Ohio hockey team this season with the Ohio Hockey Network for the last 4 years, to give us insight on how the Bobcats got it done. Jake, how'd they do it last night?
Well, I mean, first off, what a tremendous game for the Bobcats to go into this week. And I mean, it was just an interesting matchup because we've seen both teams play each other all the way back, I believe, in October. And it's always been a close matchup when it comes to the first period. Adrian and Ohio, they always used to kind of, they play a little bit steady. They don't want to commit those turnovers. They don't want to commit any penalties either. So they were going to take it easy. So I would say it was pretty even for most of that first period. But then, Ohio just started to build that momentum. And then finally, senior forward Laker Aldridge scored late in the first. And that really carried the momentum for the Bobcats going into the intermission. And then it's like, all right, so you got the momentum. Barry Schutte, Andrew Saka, the two coaches are like, what adjustments are we going to need to make? And we really saw in the second period that both power plays really opened up as well because there was a couple penalties on both teams. And, the power plays failed for both squads, but you could see the shots on goal and the offensive pressure pick up for both teams. And even then, it's like, who's going to break through? Ohio's still only up by 1. Then Nolan Abraham tacks on a second goal, snipes it past Peyton Trzaka, who, by the way, Trzaka is, sorry for the pronunciation, but he is one of the most elite goaltenders in the ACHA for Adrian, and he's really built to carry a program to the finals because he's done it in the past before. This is an experienced Adrian group that we're talking about, and it was really something that, it could go both ways. So then for Ohio to get that second goal, they're still building that momentum, and then it's like the third and final period. Like, this is it. This is what you're playing for. It is absolutely... You got to send a message going into the third period. And finally, we hit the third. Ohio dominated, I would say, the first 15 minutes of that game. There was specifically a 5 to 7 minute stint where Ohio was like just suffocating Adrian in their own defensive zone. And it was a battle. Adrian scores with 5 minutes left. Momentum flips. Adrian's putting more pressure and shots on goal. Matt Zazon, incredible in nets. He was absolute nails in the final minutes. The amount of poise that he showed to be able to just handle that pressure from the Bulldogs, it was incredible, especially for someone who was only making his second ACHA tournament start for the Bobcats as well. So then Bobcats withstand that pressure. Will Cone pots the empty netter, protects the lead 3-1, and just like that, Bobcats win their 5th title.
And that empty netter, watching that, it was crazy. I feel like that flipped the entire momentum. It gave them that go-ahead goal. And just what a way for this Bobcats team to end this season off a game like that with that win. It's felt like this has been a historic season for this team. There's been a lot of buzz on campus surrounding this team, and just a really great way to leave their mark on a historically great season for the team.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting thing, and I've been able to call the games for the teams these last couple years, and it was just so interesting to see the storylines because Matt Zazon, like I mentioned, it was only his second tournament start. He was playing for the Division II club team for the last 3 to 4 years. And now, I texted assistant coach Andrew Saka before the game. I was like, who's going to start in net? And he told me Zazon. And I was like, this could be a fascinating story because, Garrett Alderman and Scott Bird are two very qualified goaltenders. OU has 3 goaltenders. They used all 3 of them in their tournament run, and it worked out perfectly. Most teams, they would only use the same goalie. But the advantage Ohio had was, and in a tournament like this, you have to play about 5 games in 6 days, and that's a lot of wear and tear. And Ohio had 3 of them to choose and pick from, and it kept the goaltenders fresh and really dialed in. But you want to talk about conquering demons. Ladies and gentlemen, for the last 4 ACHA tournaments, Ohio has lost to Adrian in the tournament. Twice in the national semis, twice in the quarterfinals, and they just shut down Adrian's best talent. We're talking Captain Sebastian Smith, Eli Reimer, Matteo Turin, all had quiet nights. Bobcats made that super easy to keep them away from the score sheet and really allowed them to get that win. But it's crazy to think what the Bobcats have done because they were pushed to the edge of the cliff in their first tournament game. They blew a 3-0 lead to Arizona. Arizona scores 4 straight. You're going into the start of the third period, and it's like, oh my goodness, like what is Ohio going to do to conquer these challenges? They tie it up, win in an OT after sustaining so much pressure, and then they really played. I think these last 3 games was some of the best Ohio hockey that I've ever seen. You crush Maryville 8-1. You beat Cavin 4-0. And then you finally put it all together, conquer your demons, and beat really one of your biggest rivals and most competitive programs in club hockey.
Yeah, it was a crazy way for them to end this season, and just talking about that goalkeeping depth, having that I think really saved them down the stretch, having 3 guys who consistently hop in and out of the net for them. And you talked about how they kind of they blew that 3-0 lead, but they came back and they got it done. So what a way for this team to close out the season, and we're going to send you back to the production booth, Jake. Thanks for being here.
I will say one thing, also huge praise to Barry Schutte and Andrew Saka for what they've accomplished with this unit, because Andrew used to be a player. Andrew, assistant coach Saka was a player on the team a couple years ago, so he's really gotten familiar with this program, but the same can't be said for Barry Schutte, because Schutte, this is only his second year as a head coach. These are players that he did not recruit in order to maintain this team. So this was something that he had to have these players buy into his program, buy into his culture, and it was a huge change, but it still worked out really well. And, for the Ohio Bobcats, now they got something to build off in the future.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks, Jake. Now we'll send you back to the production group and bring Noah back in. And then we're going to move on to men's basketball. Of course, they ended their season last week against Kent State in the tournament. Tough game. Logan, what did you see from that game? And it was a tough season for the Bobcats, and it kind of felt like it came together in this game.
Yeah, obviously very disappointing loss, not necessarily because we expect Ohio to come in and beat this Kent State team. They had the guy who was the front runner for MAC Player of the Year for most of the season, and Kent State was just a dominant team, less than 10 losses on the season. But it's really disappointing just because of how this team ultimately fell short. It was close throughout the first half, and then just a dominant landslide from Kent State. Delrico Gillespie did his thing, 27 points, 8 rebounds. Both Javen Simmons and Aiden Hadaway foul out. Jackson Pavletsky, 2 of 10 on the game with just 12 points. It's just falling apart in the wrong ways in the wrong moment, and that's the end of the season for Ohio.
Yeah, and we weren't here with the game after that Miami loss. For everyone at the table who was at that Miami game, what was the atmosphere like? That was a crazy atmosphere for that game.
Just being on the court, taking photos for Bobcat Showcase, it was insane. I could barely hear myself think. So just to be there on that court, see OU faithful come out for what should have been a complete blowout, but to keep it close, I think they really had some power and some momentum going into that game, especially helped with the crowd.
And they put up one of their best offensive performances that season. Miami just got it done down the stretch. And looking at more so this year in general, they finished with a 15-17 overall record, which is the worst in the Bulls era, which is an interesting thing to look at, as Bulls has been the coach here for a minute. 9-9 conference record, which is the second worst in the Bulls era, and they were first round against Kent State. So what do we think about the overall hype for this team that came into this season and how they performed?
The overall hype for this team was high. Bowles called this one of the deepest teams he's ever coached, one of the most talented teams he's ever coached here at Ohio, and it just fell short. And what he addressed in the press conferences following the game was culture and how he's failed these guys by not setting the standard off the court, being the leader that they need to be. I think that's going to lead to probably some tough conversations with athletic director Slade Larstride, because you have a precedent here to set. You set the precedent in 2021. This is a team that wants to contend for MAC championships. We're just 5 years removed from that, and we haven't sniffed it again. Now you've got guys like Elijah Elliott transferring out. You're losing your best players in Jackson Pavletsky and Aiden Hadaway. Those guys are going to be impossible to replace in the transfer portal, or if not, just like a landslide effort to try and replace them in the transfer portal. Next year is going to be a down year for Ohio. I don't think that's difficult to imagine. And while I think Bull's job is secure for at least another year, I have heard people express that the future might be short-lived.
I would completely agree with you, Logan. I think that when you looked at the paper, I think they had what they needed to get it done. Maybe it wasn't a total MAC championship or something like that, but at least farther than the first round. And I would agree with the culture aspect that each guy individually looked great, but as a connection and as a team and as a culture, like you said, there was a lack of disconnection.
Yeah, and we definitely saw that towards the end of the season when they were close to putting complete games together, but then they sort of struggled to get it down to the finish line. And looking at this team next year, you talked about, Logan, it's probably going to be a down year. What can this team work on to bounce back from, I don't know, the culture kind of surrounding this team?
You kind of need like a Herculean transfer portal class, not just in terms of talent, but in terms of culture and people who fit. I think the big theme of this year and what kind of disappointed fans the most and led to the season that was accountability. It was crashing out on refs, crashing out on opposing teams, going into press conferences and shifting blame or making excuses. I think people are just tired of that.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that needs to be fixed in the future, scoring defense. This is the worst scoring defense in the Bulls era. On top of that, the last 2 seasons, really, we've seen a lot of OU playing really, really close in the first half, and then it just kind of dies out towards the end of the game. So I don't know if that's a lack of conditioning. I don't know if that's just a lack of drive or lack of depth or what, but it's been a consistent theme.
It's absolutely a lack of guard depth, and I think we've looked at the perimeter defense throughout the season. Jackson Pavlovsky is playing 35 minutes every game. AJ Sheldon is playing 35 minutes every game. You're looking at guys like Jesse Burris, who are not strong defenders, to come in. Dior Connors, Elijah Elliott spent a lot of the year injured, and now he's transferring out. So in terms of scoring defense, you've got to be able to create those turnovers. Against Kent State, we only saw them create 5 off 3 steals. That wasn't enough to get them back in the game in the second half when the scoring in the half court started to stall.
And how do others, such as student or faculty at the university, perceive how the season turned out? Obviously we have our, gripes as reporters for this team, but, what's the overall vibe from the student population, you think?
I mean, like I said, you see the press conference clips of Jeff Bowles saying that the refs didn't call the game right, or Aiden Hadaway talking about how the refs didn't call the game correctly, or that whining about how Miami or Toledo was playing them. It's just, it gets kind of tiring as a fan to see loss after loss and lack accountability. I think this kind of era of the team, this regime, whether it's with the seniors on the team, people just kind of got tired of it throughout the year.
And, speaking of those seniors on their team, they had a lot of seniors. They had Pav, Dior Connors, Aiden Hadaway, AJ Sheldon. Coming into next season, are there guys on the roster you hope to step up, or you think they're really going to probably rely on that recruiting class?
I mean, assuming everybody comes back who hasn't already put their name in the transfer portal, which is just Elijah Elliott, I think J.J. Kelly, Jesse Burris, and Kier Kawani are the guys you're looking to step up. Those were all redshirt freshmen or true freshmen this year. You want to see them in more featured roles. They're looking at potentially all 3 being starters next year. Mm-hmm. With Javen Simmons being kind of the only key starter to return, that's a big hole that you need to fill.
Well, we talked about depth being an issue. Do we see a problem, or not necessarily do we see a problem, but do we kind of fear that Javen Simmons could be like the bell cow, like the same way that Pav is this year? Do we fear that like Simmons could be the guy getting like 30, 40 minutes a game or 35 minutes a game? Like, is that like a real possibility?
I think it's difficult to project that just because of how he differs as a player. I mean, he's 6'7", 245 pounds, 250 pounds. Doesn't carry the same longevity. He played a lot of short spurt minutes for Ohio this year. Was interchanging with Jalen Breath constantly, multiple times per half, and he also is a little foul prone. So you kind of got to set him up in ways that don't get him in that early foul trouble, don't get him winded early. So just that kind of bell cow situation. It's hard to project Javen that same way that Pav has been, because Pav you can ask him to take the ball up the court, play at his own pace, and really dictate that. I don't think you can ask the same of Javen.
tough way to end the season for the men's. And the women's basketball lost in the second round of the MAC tournament against Miami. They beat them just a couple weeks ago in that doubleheader. But overall, this was a very strong season for the women's basketball team, Noah.
Yeah, it was a very strong season. Past couple of years, we've been talking about how this Ohio women's basketball team has been just, not good. I remember back when we would have, Darius on the table talking.
He was an
everybody.
naysayer.
He was. Darius would sit up here and talk about how the team was just it was pitiful and all that stuff. And there was a very low, confidence level in this team in Bob Bolden coming into this year. And I think Bob Bolden shut everyone up.
Yeah, I think
I've been a guy that's been very critical of Bolden in the past, and I think that he shut me up. This was a really, really, really good season compared to the last couple ones. It's a nice fresh breath of air seeing the OU can compete.
Yeah.
And also you got to give the flowers to Bailey Tabling. 33 points against Central Michigan in a really, really, really good game. Team did really good as a whole in that game against Central Michigan. Shot 43% from three, forced 20 turnovers, 25 points on a fast break. That's basketball that's hard to stop. Even in a close game like that. But as we said, weren't able to keep it rolling. You lost to Miami, who's really good and I think could potentially knock off West Virginia in the women's tournament, by the way. But the shooting 4 for 29 from three is never going to win a basketball game ever. And when you're allowing 4 people from Miami to get into double figures, it's hard to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was, like you said, a gauntlet of a Miami team that, I think I talked about it. If their men's team wasn't as good, I think this women's team would have a lot of the spotlight just because how good they are. But looking back on this season as a whole, we talked about Bailey Tabling. What other players stood out to you and hope to stand out even more next season?
Obviously we talked about tabling, but the big thing that stood out for this OU team, in my opinion, was the guard play, right? We saw a lot from players like Asia Baxter and Madison Lim towards the second half of the year, and I think that they would be able to carry on that guard play into next year.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I like looking at this women's team, they aren't done. They didn't make the national tournament for the women, but they host UMBC in the WNIT on Thursday in Athens. And I'm really excited for this game because this is a UMBC team that is 16-14 overall. They're a good team. They took Vermont to double overtime in the American East tournament. What are you looking for in this tournament run for them, or even this game on Thursday?
It's also not to mention the fact that they beat Vermont right before the tournament started. So this is a decent team. They shoot really well. Much like Ohio, they shoot very well. They play good on-ball defense. They rebound probably a little bit better than Ohio does, in my opinion. The problem is they're not very good at stopping shooters. They're allowing, I think it's 40.4% from the field. That's something that Ohio can absolutely capitalize on. You've got, again, we saw Tabling take over in the MAC tournament game against Central Michigan. There's a real chance that if she gets open, she's on a hot streak. That you could win this game by double digits.
Yeah.
So.
And opening this up to the table, having this game in Athens, Ohio, I think that's so cool. Obviously, this isn't the national tournament, but having a game in the Convo, I don't know, what are we expecting? We expect vibes to be high for this game. I expect a good turnout.
I'm very excited. I'll be at the game in attendance. That's going to be not even just as media, which is what I've covered this women's basketball team. It was a great experience, but getting to experience that as a fan is going to be something that I'm looking forward to.
I also like how the bracket stacks up for OU because if they beat UMBC, they will play Marshall and Huntington. And if they beat Marshall, then they have a chance to play Youngstown State. So I think it's kind of cool how there's a lot of local talent in this bracket for the girls. And I'm really excited that this team gets to keep playing because, there have been good things, but there's also things I think they can improve on in these last couple of games. But that is enough for the women's basketball team. Good luck to them for that UMBC game. But we're going to move on to softball with Kasey. Ohio softball, they dropped their MAC opening series against Toledo. They took the second game in the series, but they dropped the others. Kasey, what did you see in that series?
I missed talking about these girls, but the Toledo curse, didn't miss that. Toledo was only 5-19 this season. Weak squad. They lose the series too, but Toledo has won 5 of their past 6 games. So it seems like the Rockets are finding their stride, but Ohio really should have had this one, and it's the Toledo curse. So I'll just jump into game one. Toledo had an early lead, 4 runs in the first inning, which just set the tone, and Ohio ended up fighting their way back to take a 6-5 lead with 3 hits from Brenna Farmer and help from Kylie Gorsuch, who were both adding sparks to this offense. But a late throwing error by Ohio flipped that score, and they lost 7-6, which was just devastating after an electric comeback like that. I've talked about patterns with this team a lot, and they don't commit very many errors, but when they do, it's unfortunately detrimental. Game 2, all of a sudden this game, the bats heat up, and this is a pattern that we like to see. Ohio wins the second game of that series, beating Toledo 10-6 with 5 home runs. Colleen Bear has 2, Kylie Gorsuch has 2, and Riley McDaniel has 1. Skip Miller took the mound and pitched consistently, allowed 9 hits and 4 strikeouts. So it's not utterly dominant, but it's consistent, and we like to see her get the job done. Game 3, the score flipped. Toledo winning 10-6 and leaving the weekend 1-2 for the Bobcats. And this is how they will start their conference record. Everyone in the dugout got involved. Izzy Wilson went 2 for 3 with a double, 4 RBIs. Belle Hummel went 2 for 4 with a run. Brenna Farmer went 2 for 3 with a run. Shelby Wessler 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs. Jordan Wyckoff, another player I sit next to in sports management. She added 2 hits and an RBI. So everyone's getting involved. The bats are heating up. No errors in this one, but they just couldn't find the connection there. Bottom of the 4th, Toledo jumped a huge 8-2 lead, and the Bobcats couldn't recover from there. So they end that series with a 17-10 overall record.
And opening us up to the table a little bit, we saw how well this team played at the Catamount Classic 2 weeks ago now. They were 4-5 in those games, and then you come into your MAC opener against Toledo and you drop 2 of them and lose the series. Is this a issue of concern for, we think, for this women's softball team? Because Toledo, not the best MAC team, so I'm just wondering, if there's any worry expressed between anyone here.
No, not really.
Okay.
I mean, you're going to have those weekends where it's not really clicking for you. I think they will be able to bounce back next weekend and get the win over whoever they play. I don't know who they play, but
I mean, they're playing at IU this upcoming weekend. It's fine. But the reason I'm not necessarily worried about this is, last season we saw Ohio have really consistently good pitching and really consistently bad batting. Not been the case at all this year, right? As a top 2 first in the MAC, correct, on batting average?
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're first in the MAC on batting average, and they have almost doubled the amount of home runs they've had all of last season halfway through it. Got 22 right now. They had 12 last year. So we're seeing the bats start to turn around, and as the season gets later on, I am 100% confident in Skip Miller to take control on the mound, and this team will be hard to beat.
I think it also just boils down to the MAC is a very good softball league. Miami has a dynasty going. Toledo is always pretty good. The Michigans are always pretty good. That's just something you can count on. And OU's going to drop some series that they probably shouldn't drop, just because this is a good league and anybody can win any given series.
And a thing we've looked at a little bit is the pitching for this team. We talked about how good their pitching was last year. They were towards the top of the MAC in rankings, and now they're at around 7th. And so do we think pitching could be an issue of concern for this team that came off a season last year where they had such successful pitching?
I mean, the loss of Anna Wise cannot be overstated, right? She was such a very she's a very important part of that 1-2 punch with her and Skip. But Keegan Moore, Allie Myers, they've played some decent games. Keegan's 5-1, Allie's 4-3. We've seen decent performances out of these two. So I think as the year goes on, those two will feel a lot more comfortable in their roles and be able to be the backup that Skip would need.
I'm also seeing 4 or 5 pitchers rotate for every series. So once things start to pick up consistently, and whether that's Skip really stepping up and throwing more pitches, I think that maybe narrowing it down to a 2 or a 3 would be more practical.
which I think having multiple pitchers for this team is what they need because Skip, she's been pitching for this team since her sophomore year, so there might be a potential, for wear and tear, might be getting hurt a little bit. So having that rotation, I think, is something great for this softball team. But they were originally scheduled to play today at their home opener against Dayton, but now they will look forward to their upcoming series against Northern Illinois this weekend. What should fans expect, Kasey?
Yeah, so the stakes for this home opener just got raised massively by the schedule change from Dayton to NIU. We see the number 1 and the number 2 teams from the plate for this first game in Athens, and it is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, and this is, of course, the home opener. They're playing a tough NIU team, like you said, first and second in batting average. The bats are going to be hot, and the NCAA says top teams are looking for .320 or higher.
Yes.
And that's just a crazy mark.
I know. Just adding some little comparison, not many people know a bunch about college softball batting averages. But Ohio's top 3 girls together averaging .42-ish. Yes, and top NIU girls are averaging .455. Some perspective on this, like you said, the NCAA is looking for .32. Obviously, that number got smoked. And then another perspective, Oklahoma University, the number 1 team in the country for batting averages, is .452. So these numbers are truly ridiculous. When we put that in perspective to the top softball teams in the nation, they're holding up. So that's why I think this one's going to be so entertaining.
And it's going to be interesting to see if the pitching can recover against this NIU team, which has this incredible stat with their batting. And after this NIU series, they have a non-conference game against Pitt. They will host Pitt here next Tuesday. Any expectations looking forward to that Pitt game that it will kind of break between their MAC schedule a little bit?
Yeah, I would say expectations here are, it's hard for me to say this game is just going to be so different. Pitt is 15-11 right now compared to Ohio's 17-10, but we have to consider a possible physicality difference when you jump to the ACC. Pitt's schedule so far is gruesome compared to Ohio's. Almost all Big Ten, SEC, Big 12 teams. I'm expecting Pitt to be more experienced, maybe even more physical, but I see nothing concrete here when you look at the stat sheets or look at these girls individually that makes this game unwinnable for the Bobcats. And when, cross our fingers, they do win, this non-conference record will look great.
And it's also a very important game for head coach Jenna Hall, former assistant at Pitt. So a lot of stakes here.
I didn't even check that. I like that. Okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be a great game to see if they can win this NIU series, but also get that out-of-conference game against Pitt. Should be a lot of fun to watch. But we're going to move over to our OU men's baseball. Guys, losing streak has continued for the Bobcats. It seems like they just cannot catch a break on defense and pitching.
Yeah, man. To put it lightly, I mean, it's crazy. It's terrible. But they had Western Michigan. They traveled over to Bob Wren this past weekend. The Bobcats dropped all 3. Friday it was 20-12. Saturday it was 6-3, so decently closer. And then Sunday 16-7.
All right. And then really quickly, just because I'm curious here, Luke. Out of all of the pitchers that have pitched 10 or more innings this season, what do you think the lowest ERA is?
I'm not a baseball guy. You got to ask.
All right, it's got to be 5+, right?
7.1.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
What?
7.1 is absurd.
7.1. Like you were saying, pitching this year has been bad.
Yeah. Just to jump off of that, all 3 days, Western hit an average of .413. So if there's any
that's
any
better
sort
than
of perspective,
that's better than their team's 3-point shooting percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is easier to hit a baseball against Ohio than it is to hit a 3 on any given game.
I mean, when you put it in perspective like that, that is a crazy stat. I mean, looking at some of the 20 runs in a baseball game, no matter what the level is, I just think that is a ridiculous margin. And it's ridiculous because they can have a 12-20 game, go to a 3-6 game, which is much closer for this team, and then go right back to a 7-16 game.
Yeah, I mean, inconsistent is really what it comes down to. Also, you're allowing 42 runs in 3 days against a MAC school.
Yeah.
That's absurd just to hear the number in total.
You shouldn't have to hear that number.
And this was the home opener at Bob Wren for their MAC play. They're going to play Bowling Green at Bowling Green, but they'll take on Morehead State before that. You know, what is there a remedy for this team? You know, we've talked about these last couple of weeks where they've experimented with the pitching, but it's not really gotten anywhere. You know, how can we look forward to this Morehead State game coming up and this next Bowling Green matchup in their MAC championship?
You know, you really have to lock down on the pitching. I can't get over it enough. You rank 299th out of 300 teams in the nation for earned runs allowed. You need to lock down this pitching. You know, I'm really just gonna skip the BG because you know the MAC is where you need to harp down on to. You know, they go to BG 3-game series. BG is currently 11th in the MAC hitting at 2.28. On the mound, BG is also ranked 9th in the MAC with an ERA of 7.62 or 7.62. The one guy to watch out for is Vinny Salvoni, hitting 290 with 4 home runs and 5 doubles. He's also struck out 17 times this season, so could be a little turnaround game for the Bobcats, but I'm not confident in that pitching.
Yeah, I think the season has kind of turned into a disappointment. The Craig Moore situation at the end of last year was a disaster. You had parents allegedly making burner accounts on Twitter to go comment on the posts and blame him for losses. Andrew C. comes in. He's supposed to be this pitching guru, this guy who's going to figure it out on the mound. You lose all your best hitters. Ben Slanker's playing like an All-American at Louisville right now. I believe he's like second in the nation in home runs or something like that, or in RBIs. But Andrew C's supposed to come in, be this pitching guru, figure things out on the mound, and it's amounted to an even worse season that Craig Moore produced in any of his years on the mound.
And these past few years, right? You know, the last few years of the Craig Moore, we all know how that went down. But it's been a pretty consistent issue for Ohio baseball. It's been that they cannot pitch. I don't know what needs to change to like fix that. But I mean, dude, like some of these numbers are just crazy. 11 runs a game.
299.
299.
Yep.
What's the team that's worse than Ohio?
I did not look
I
at
want to
that.
know.
But you know what?
I'm gonna guess. Give
I
me.
think producer Jake just said Oklahoma State.
There's no way it's Oklahoma State.
Alcorn
Really?
State. Alcorn State.
Alcorn.
Sorry.
Okay.
Alcorn.
Being second to last in any stat category at a national league is not where you want to be, especially in a sport as big as baseball. And you're right, Noah and Logan. It's been tough kind of trying to watch the coaches put this together and nothing really come to fruition. And that Morehead State game was actually canceled, so they're going to go right into this Bowling Green series, go right into it, and they're going to they have another series at Ball State next week, so they won't be back to Bob Wren until April. But we're going to move on to the Ohio football offseason. It is the offseason for Ohio football, and they hired plenty of new assistants on Monday morning as Ohio welcomed 3 new members to the football program with a new general manager. What do you have for us, Noah?
So we got to start out with the general manager. You know, Sean Cook. That's a huge get, right? Yeah. Former assistant of player personnel at Texas A&M, graduated from Tennessee, stopped at Duke, stopped at UConn. I mean, this guy has a great resume, and for a time where Ohio has a new head coach in John Hauser, they have all of these you're coming off of a year, 2 years ago winning the MAC. This past season you come a little short. And you have thousands of eyes on you because of what happened off of the field. You've got. There's never been a more pivotal time for Ohio football, and I think hiring a guy like this to manage the team is just it's a home run of a hire.
Yeah, I really like this hire. Coming from an A&M guy, I think it's going to be a great fit at general manager. I'm also just really excited to see what this team can do next season. I feel like not having Brian Smith, Parker's not going to be here, and so having kind of a new identity for this team, I think bringing in a new general manager, I think that can kind of work in tandem with each other. But they hired a new wide receiver coach in Danny Langsdorf. Noah, go through his resume a little bit and what he's done during his time as a coach.
All right, so started out as a graduate assistant at Cal Lutheran, and then went through about 1 million teams before he got to where he is now. Some notable stops. He was at Oregon State a couple of times between being the quarterbacks coach, tight ends coach. spent a couple years with the Saints, or a year with the Giants. This guy's been around the block. This guy knows the game. And this is another good hire for Ohio. That Ohio's been a breeding ground essentially for decent receivers. You had Sam Wiglis, then you had Coleman Owen, and then this past season you had Chase Hendricks, Rodney Harris. You've got guys that have come through this program and made a real difference through the air. Having a good coach like this with a resume that this school has had it's another home run hire. I think they're doing a phenomenal job hiring. And then you can look at some of the other hires they had. Ron Crook was an offensive line coach at Cincinnati during the college football playoffs. He just came from Virginia Tech. Now, little background information. I'm from Southwest Virginia, very familiar with Virginia Tech. The Virginia Tech fans are very happy to see this guy go. I'll explain why.
Okay.
Virginia Tech has been terrible.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech has been awful, and they don't recruit well because Southwest Virginia is not necessarily a recruiting hotbed. You're pulling guys from D.C. You're pulling guys from the Tidewater area, North Carolina, and they just, simply put, have not been able to get the dudes that you would need to compete in the ACC. So I don't necessarily think that's a reflection of him as a coach. I think that's a reflection of the fact that Virginia Tech is lacking in the ACC. We've seen the last couple of years, we've seen them be bottom tier of one of and arguably the worst Power 4 conference in football. So when you give somebody those kind of resources, of course, they're not necessarily going to have that much success. But you can look back to that Cincinnati team with Desmond Ridder at quarterback, where they made the playoffs behind a very good offensive line. I think this is something that's really fun to look forward to. He coached at South Dakota, FCS powerhouse. Really, really good hire, I think.
Slade Larchchild connection there too, I believe.
Yep. Right? Well, he was at North Dakota State or South Dakota State.
Correct.
He's one of the Dakota states, but I mean, even then, same state.
Yeah.
And opening this up to everyone else at the table, out of these three hires between the general manager, wide receiver coach, and offensive line coach, which one are we the most excited for?
Personally, I think it's the GM.
Yeah.
I think in this new era of football, you've seen the teams that have been left behind, and the thing that they all have in common is that they don't want to get with the times, they don't want to go with NIL, they don't want to make those moves. And Ohio, unfortunately, has been a team that's not necessarily pursued that. I think this is the time to show that you're changing. You're changing the culture. You're following. We've seen Miami spend $20 million on their roster next year and make a bunch of investments in this football program. Now is the time to put your money where your mouth is, and I think hiring a very good general manager like this could show.
I think you mentioned being with the times too. Sean Cook is the times. He's a younger guy. He's lived through this and experienced it in a way that these old guys that are kind of getting washed out of college football as it becomes more of a business haven't really been able to keep up with. He is the times. He's a likable guy. He's at the top. And I think that's kind of the theme behind all these hires is that these are likable guys that you kind of trust to make good decisions, especially with recent events on the Ohio coaching staff. But that's what I like about this is that these are likable people, these are young people, these are people with valuable experience and the right take, I think.
I'm more excited for Ron Crook.
Yeah.
I love watching O-line, D-line play, especially the O-line, even though it is really hard to watch when you know the technique and you know what you should be doing. But, Cincinnati during college football, West Virginia back when they were decent at best. And then, being able to coach Zach Ertz. One of the best tight ends to ever play. So I really feel like he can bring a big impact to this O-line that has been decent at times.
Yeah. And I like seeing that all these hires, they are coming kind of from the Power 4 level below, which I think is something this team needs because, they have aspirations now to maybe get in that CFP playoff as that last spot, get that Power 5 bid. But, I like a lot of these hires, and I'm really excited as, we get farther into the offseason what happens with football. But we're going to move on to our quick hit segment where we're going to give a spotlight to other OU sports with a quick headline. Logan, take us through the swim and dive team.
Ohio women's swim and diving have two athletes battling for the NCAA championships. Zita Zoki and Cassidy DeBetta will start competitions at multiple events on Thursday. The nationals will take place in Athens, not Ohio, but Georgia.
All right, Reece, and then take us through Ohio wrestling.
So Ohio wrestling, there is 4 members on the team that will compete in nationals from Thursday to Saturday. Garrett Thompson, Sal Purin, Zane Lehman all return to the nationals, while redshirt junior Derek Rake Derek Rake will make his first appearance. It's the most qualifiers that OU has had since 2023. Plus, Nationals aren't in Cleveland, Ohio, so Bobcat faithful could make the drive back up all the way over there. Not a good place for basketball, maybe a good place for wrestling.
We'll see if wrestling can get it done, but that will wrap it up for Quick Hits. We have some short read and reacts for this week. I love bringing this segment back, and we have two very important stories to cover. First and foremost, last night Venezuela won the World Baseball Classic against the United States 3-2. For all the more experienced baseball fans at the field, what does this loss mean?
Mark DeRosa should never wear the United States hat again. That guy was awful, right? Cubs guy, very biased towards Pete Crow Armstrong, but he was 4 for 12 with 4 RBIs going, and you bench him for Byron Buxton. Okay, maybe that's not even the worst one, right? Gunnar Henderson hit a home run against the DR to put the U.S. in the position that they were in, and you benched him for Alex Bregman, who has been terrible during the World Baseball Classic, right? We watched Aaron Judge stand and shiver at the plate and watch the ball go right by him. The pitching management was terrible. We're starting rookies, minor leaguers, when we're sending guys like Tarek Skubal back to Detroit. The MLB and the management of the teams, for guys like Tarek Skubal, for guys like Paul Skeens, for guys that are really good and they don't want to see their players get hurt, they are the sole reason the U.S. performed as badly as they did. Venezuela, I love it. I love seeing Venezuela. I love seeing the reaction for their team. I think that, this act like you've been here before that the U.S. had was awful. I hate that. You've never been there before. You won one World Baseball Classic in 2017, and nobody on that roster was on this current roster. You haven't been there before, so maybe act like you haven't been there. Yeah. Venezuela was doing it. We saw Eugenio Suarez in tears, like smacking his chest during the postgame interview. That's stuff you love to see. Yeah. The U.S. has a terrible mindset of, we're the best to ever play the game of baseball. We invented the game of baseball, and it was detrimental. Mm-hmm. So, congrats to Venezuela, but, Mark DeRosa, you suck.
I think we saw something similar to that with the Olympics before the LeBron team came out of hiding. But, the years before that team was there, in the FIBA tournaments and stuff like that, USA was getting beat by, other teams overseas. So I would like to see.
That's where we got the Noah Lyles quote from, too.
Yeah.
World champion of what?
I would love to see more excitement from Team USA in this game.
And I think somebody that's going to disagree with you, Noah, about the coaching decisions there, especially in the lineup, is Eduardo Rodriguez. Heck of a game from him. 4 in the third innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, to 4 strikeouts. I memean, just suffocating.
Yes, but at the same time, you when the bats are hot, you got to let the bats stay hot. When people are not playing good in a tournament where you're playing at max, like 5 games, you don't play them. You don't start them. And it was just terrible management. All. And then we look at the Italy loss, right? That was a game that the United States should have never lost, but they lost because we started a AAA pitcher for the Mets because maybe we could just beat Italy, and then Jaron Duran sent it to the second deck twice. Yeah, great job, Mark.
We're going to move on from the World Baseball Classic and look at some more exciting news for, American sports. WNBA has finally agreed on a certified bargaining agreement, the contract between the league and its players to determine salary and working conditions for the 2026 season. All across the board, the margins are going up for how much money these girls will be paid to play this game. The salary cap is increased from $1.5 million to $7.5 million per team. That is a huge bump for the WNBA. The Supermax was raised, the average salary was raised, and even the minimum salary was raised, which this is fantastic for women's basketball.
I love it. I mean, there's a metaphor that I've been using recently to describe the WNBA and its previous lack of success, and that's you can't choke something for decades and expect it and just make fun of it when it breathes. Yeah. You have to give these women the ample opportunity, the ample financial funding they need to have success. You can't starve them of that, starve them of national TV games, and starve them of just the opportunities to prove themselves on a national stage to fans across the country and outside of the U.S., and then expect them to succeed otherwise. This new CBA, the new collective bargaining agreement, is the first step towards making this a global league,
Yeah.
like the NBA, like the NFL, and other four core sports leagues.
Love it, Logan.
Boom.
Very nice. Committee quoting, I think this can be summed up in 2 words: player empowerment, players coming to the table and standing on business and being reminded of the collective voice and of what it means to be in a union and the power of this union.
And, we can also say it's about time, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the WNBA, especially since, like that stacked draft class with people
Yep.
like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Cameron Brink. Ever since that year, we've seen the WB much more popular in the national eyes, and it's something that people will talk about on regular sports radio shows. But you used to have to go look for WNBA shows. Now it's at the front and center, and it's about time they got paid like they were at the front and center.
And they have that Sunday.
Yeah.
What is that thing called?
It's like women's sports night or something like that
it's
for
just
ESPN.
on Sunday instead of some baseball.
Sunday night baseball.
Sorry, no offense.
No,
but,
Sunday
like,
night baseball. Sunday night baseball was
Yeah.
terrible. It was a good call by ESPN.
I'm so excited to see this increase with the WNBA, especially with the Women's History Month. No better time to get it done. But we're gonna move on to, of course, March Madness. I know everyone at this table has filled out a bracket. Everyone at this table is chomping at the bit to pitch why their team is gonna win and why someone else at the table is gonna say why that team won't win. We're gonna break down each of the regions. We're gonna tell you our predictions for our assigned region and more so a winner or dark horse we like out of each region. Of course, we're going to start at the top of the bracket in the East with Logan.
All right, starting Duke v. Siena, the 1v16 in this region. Duke takes this one.
Yes.
99 times out of 100, maybe 999 out of 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
This is they're coming into this game injured. Patrick Ngangba might not be back for the first round. Caleb Foster might not be back for the first couple weekends. Duke takes this one.
Yeah.
Moving on. Ohio State versus TCU. More contested matchup.
Yeah.
TCU is super talented. David Punch went on the radio and told the Columbus Dispatch that, hey, we take this game 9 times out of 10. But you got Bruce Thornton on the other end. That's one of the hottest players in the college basketball right now, one of the best scorers overall. It's going to be contested. I have Ohio State moving forward. Mm-hmm. St. John's versus Northern Iowa. St. John's is a unit, probably one of the best front courts in the country. You got Bryce Hopkins, Dylan Mitchell, and, of course, Zuby Ejiofor, the Big East Defensive Player of the Year and Player of the Year. One of the first to ever do it. I think maybe the first. Maybe the second. But St. John takes this one. I think their lack of guard talent might be a issue down the road, but right now against Northern Iowa, not going to be too much of an issue. Kansas for Cal Baptist. This is one of my upset picks.
Ooh, okay, I like that.
It's not a bad
I don't
pick.
mind
Not
it.
a bad
I don't
pick.
mind it.
I am ready for the nation to learn the name Dom Daniels Jr. 22 point per game this year. He just moves better than everybody on the court. I'm thinking of that Jonah Hill Moneyball scene where it's like,
Yeah.
his defect, he's 5'10". But you're looking to get at one of the streakier teams in the country against Kansas, who Darren Peterson, who knows how many minutes he's going to play? Who knows if he's going to shoot 4 of 13 in the game and shoot them out of these clutch moments? Floyd Badunga, not the biggest center himself, super incredible player, obviously, but this Kansas team has been streaky. You can expect them to maybe be one of these teams that gives up these big seed differential matchups. Louisville versus South Florida. Big news today.
Yeah.
Michael Brown is out. Thing that's going to impact that the most is that Louisville plays super fast with him on the court. They rank 99th percentile in the country in pace when he is on the court. That drops, I think, about 3 possessions per 100, or 3 possessions per 40 minutes. The good news, Louisville is super talented top to bottom. There really isn't as much of a difference in terms of statistical lookout between their top guy and their bottom guy. South Florida, though, Isaiah Nelson, a guy you got to watch. I have Louisville moving on. Michigan State, they're going to take it against North Dakota State. Incredibly coached team. That's going to be a theme. UCLA takes it against Central Florida. Nick Cronin, not a huge fan, but great coach. Donovan Dent is him. UConn versus Furman. UConn just doesn't lose upsets like this. They're going to move on. And as far as winner in this division of the bracket, I have Duke. We're riding the booze cruise, baby. And dark horse, I think St. John's. The guard play is the X factor. If a guy like Dylan Darling or Ian Jackson heats up, you're looking at a team that could make the Final Four handedly.
Mm-hmm. That region, the East, is tough, Logan, and I think it's going to be crazy to see who comes out of it. But we're going to move to Kasey for the South region of the bracket.
Yeah, I got Florida and Prairie View or Lehigh. We're not sure which one. Wait, do we know? No, we don't know yet.
We'll know tonight.
Okay,
Yeah.
tonight. Florida, I'm taking that. Don't have anything else to say. Iowa and Clemson, 8 and 9. I've come back to this in my bracket.
Yeah.
I've probably changed it once a day. I can't decide. I'll probably flip it again before, I have 12 hours left before I change it. Right now, I'm thinking Iowa because I'm biased in the Big Ten. And I also think they're kind of like that sneaky tough thing. I always worry about them. 5 Vanderbilt and 12 McNeese. 12 versus 5 seeds they always get me. They always make me want to second guess, but I'll take Vandy for this one. Strength of schedule is going to be my main reason between those two. 4 Nebraska and 13 Troy. The stat is kind of killing me on this game. The Nebraska Cornhuskers are the only team that has never won an NCAA tournament in the Big Ten. Not only in the Big Ten, but in the entire Power 5. 0 for 8. Could it be 9? My bracket's saying no. And the strength of schedule is a huge factor again. I think Nebraska has a lot of big wins. Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, MSU. I think they'll get it done for the first time. North Carolina and VCU, another game I'm on the edge with. When you are keeping an eye out for upsets in the South, I think this is kind of the one that everyone's thinking about. UNC star Caleb Wilson is not playing in the tournament due to a broken thumb. He averages 20 points per game, and I think it's a huge loss. So I'm taking VCU on the upset on this one. Illinois and Penn. Only Penn team I'm picking is Penn State. Illinois, I'm kidding. But actually, I'm going to take Illinois because they have huge wins like against Purdue. And I actually have them going to my Sweet 16.
I really like Illinois, too.
I feel like it's kind of sneaky. St. Mary's and number 10, Texas A&M. 7 and 10s are always interesting. 7s beat 10 61% of the time. I'm going with the majority vote, and I'm taking St. Mary's, but I think either team's going to lose to Houston next round, so I'm not as concerned. And then number 2, Houston, and 15, Idaho. Like I just said, I'm going with Houston. And they're actually going to be my winner of the South. I think they upset number 1 Florida in the Final Four and head to the Final Four.
Great picks, Kasey. I think the most intriguing team of that region is probably Vanderbilt. I think that 5 seed is a little bit, they just won the SEC. No, that was Arkansas.
They lost in the SEC.
Okay, they lost in it, but I think they played well enough to do a little bit better than that. But we're going to go to Reece in the West.
So the West, we start out with LIU and Arizona. I'm not going to talk about that. Arizona BTA. Utah State and Villanova has the potential to be the best 8 and 9 game of this bracket. Villanova's having the best season under Kyle Neptune so far. Tyler Perkins, 14 points per game. Utah State, second-year head coach Jared Calhoun. He's made the NCAA tournament in both seasons. Something to look out
Great
for.
coach.
Led by MJ Collins Jr. with 18. High Point, Wisconsin. High Point's on a 14-game winning streak, but I still have Wisconsin taking this one. Hawaii, Arkansas, not going to talk about that one. Arkansas's taking that one. Texas and BYU. This is a close one, but I think BYU will take this one as well, especially because, AJ is just too good. Kennesaw State and Gonzaga, not talking about this one because, well, it's Gonzaga. Missouri and Miami, it's another tight game. If Miami can get Missouri in the foul trouble early, they can take this one easily. Missouri averages 18 personal fouls a game, so I think Miami can take this one. And then Queens and Purdue. In my little notes here, I have the eyes emoji next to Purdue because the last time they won the Big Ten, they were first-round exits.
That was the FDU, right?
Yes.
Shout out Zach Edey against the shortest team in the country.
Shout out Ainsley Almanor, who transferred to Kentucky.
So Queens' top 4 scorers are shooting over 30% from 3, with 2 close to 40. Nazir Mann leads the team in pretty much every stat. He's scoring 13 points per game. And then Purdue, obviously we all know Braden Smith, 14 points per game. And then Fletcher Lawyer also with 14 points per game. He's shooting over 42% from 3. I have my dark horse as Miami. I wanted to go Utah State on this one, but they're too tough. of an upper bracket to make it to Sweet 16. I have Miami going to at least the Sweet 16. Winner of the region is going to be Arizona. In my opinion, the most complete team in this region.
All right, Reese, I like those picks. I've seen Noah grinning over here as you guys say yours, so I cannot wait to hear what Noah has for this Midwest region.
Midwest region is my favorite region in this bracket by far. I think there's the most potential for chaos in this region than any other one. Start out, though, Howard, Michigan. Dude, Yaxel, next question. St. Louis, Georgia. What Josh Schertz has done at St. Louis cannot be understated. Josh Schertz, Lincoln Memorial University legend, took him to the D2 National Championship in 2016, 20 minutes from my hometown. So shout out Josh Schertz. Unfortunately, he's meeting the buzzsaw, and Georgia's going to beat him because this Georgia offense is very, very, very good. Jeremiah Wilkinson, probably going to drop 30 points on him. I don't see him stopping. Akron, Texas Tech. Earlier in the week, we saw Vivek Ramaswamy talk about how we need to, close down some Ohio schools. I think the guys in Lubbock might think that, too, because Akron's going to beat Texas Tech. Tavari Johnson, very, very good. I forget, Shamat?
Shama Scott.
Yeah, very, very good. The guard play for Akron is unstoppable, I think, and I think that without JT Toppin, this is a pretty obvious upset in my eyes. I got Akron. I saw you were saying something.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, Christian Anderson probably out for this game. JT Toppin definitely out. I think Tavari Johnson and Monty Lyles in that case are the two best players on the court.
Mm-hmm. And I think that Akron is going to, I think it might be a 10, 15-plus point upset in my eyes. Anyway, Hofstra, Alabama. I've seen a lot of people talk about Hofstra. And, no Aiden Holloway. We've seen the whole scandal going on there at Alabama. But I don't think that's much of a problem because they still have LeBaron Filan. Alabama is a very, very good offensive team. Hofstra, very slow-paced, good three-point shooting team. And that's a formula for upsets in March. Yeah. But I think that's not really going to be a problem against Alabama. Virginia Wright State. Virginia, don't even bother. Miami, Tennessee, or SMU, Tennessee. I hate this game just so much, being a Kentucky fan and an Ohio student. If Miami wins, Tennessee by 100. If SMU wins, Tennessee by 90. Santa Clara, Kentucky. I'm so tired of hearing about this all week. Oh, Santa Clara is a good three-point shooting team. Kentucky is a better three-point shooting team. They have a higher percentage. I've heard Santa Clara is a fast, up-tempo team. They have the top 10 offense over the last 10 games in the West Coast Conference, which is good, but it's not the SEC. I don't think that this game is going to be close. Brandon Garrison and Mohamed Diabate played the tournament of their lives. We saw a dip for Otega away, which is not something that's normal. Still dropping 20 points, and it's a bad tournament performance from him. I think Kentucky runs away with this one. And then Iowa State is going to beat Tennessee State. I think my dark horse for this region, I do think Kentucky beats Iowa State. That's a little biased also because, a man can dream. But Akron could beat Alabama in that second round. That's a team. I don't have that on my bracket. I don't have, the courage to do it. But Akron could beat Alabama. My winner of this region, though, is not Michigan. It's Virginia. I think this Virginia defense has been phenomenal recently. They took Duke to the wire. I actually have Virginia as my national champion, and I think this is a really, really, really good team. So,
Noah, I like it.
Cooking.
I like it.
I'm not even a Virginia guy.
And speaking of upset predictions like that, we're going to move to our last segment of the show with Upset Watch. All of the Upset Watch picks this week, of course, are in the March Madness Tournament. Logan, let's start with you. This has been a big 5-12 upset that's been talked about. You have High Point over Wisconsin.
Yeah, and it's not because Chase Johnston, who you've seen the ESPN graphics about, is going to be a Jack Golke type figure. This is a team on a 14-game winning streak, and High Point is just one of the best coached teams in the country, plain and simple. They've recruited really well. They have former Kentucky guy Cameron Fletcher on their team. He's an X factor for them, who I think could be a standout in this tournament.
And Reese, we're going to jump over to you. We talked about Vanderbilt a little bit. You are not high on them. You have McNeese over Vanderbilt.
I do. McNeese has one of the best defensive teams in the country. Maybe best, could say. It's not going to be close, I don't think. Or it will be close. Sorry. It will be close, but defense wins championships, man. Defense wins championships.
We're going to go over to Noah. Noah cracked a smile when you had Illinois beating Penn earlier. Noah, Penn is without their best player, but you still have them beating Illinois.
Penn was without their best player the entire Ivy League tournament, and we watched Penn take over. TJ Power. If you don't know the name now, learn the name. He's sick. He's sick and could miss the game. But if he plays, we're looking at a Michael Jordan flu game from TJ Power. I think they beat Illinois. Illinois has one of the worst defenses among the top 6 seeds. I think with the Fran McCaffrey green light, TJ Power is a guy that will be a name we remember 10 years from now when we're talking March Madness legends. Give me pen.
And finishing with Kasey. Kasey, you have 10 UCF over UCLA. Definitely an intriguing matchup.
I'm not as enthusiastic about my upset
That's
as
fair.
you are,
That's
but
fair.
I think UCF has the edge on the outside of the arc. Strong defense. I think they can slow down the Bruins once you interrupt that fast pace. No March Madness upset is too crazy, especially the 10 and the 7 seed. All right, so I'm chilling.
I think this is going to be a great March Madness. I've gone back and forth all week, but we're going to get to our SportsBeat game of the week. Our game of the week, of course, is the Ohio women's basketball match against the UMBC Retrievers in the first round of the NIT. Ohio will host UMBC at the Convo on Thursday. Who doesn't love tournament play at the Convo? That game will start at 7. It should be an electric game. And for our SportsBeat player of the week, our SportsBeat player of the week is, of course, Bailey Tabling for her unreal 33-point performance against CMU in the first round of the MAC tournament. Tabling shot 12 for 19 from the field, including 5 for 9 from 3 to carry the Bobcats into round 2 before losing to Miami, but that doesn't overshadow Tabling's amazing career effort. So congrats to Bailey Tabling for reappearing as SportsBeat player of the week. Thank you for listening to SportsBeat on WOUB. I'm your host, Luke Schmitt, and with me today is
Reece Merkel.
Logan Adams.
Kasey Hill.
And Noah Cavin.
You can listen to us on WOUB 1340 AM radio at 9 p.m. on Thursdays or on WOUB Public Media's digital accounts on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget you can follow us on Instagram at SportsBeatWB for more content. And until then, we'll see you next week. This has been SportsBeat.